Hi, I'm Morgan Smith, and welcome to WorthPointe Trending, a panel discussion on safety and opportunity investing in the COVID-19 era, with our special guest, Apollo Dupescu, PhD, Vice President, Dimensional Fund Advisors. Quick disclaimer, investors cannot invest directly in indexes, and they do not reflect fees or expenses of investments. Historical performance is not a guarantee of future results. WorthPointe is a fee-only registered investment advisor serving families and business owners across the United States with financial planning and wealth management. All of our advisors are designated as certified financial planning professionals and are also partners of the firm, so we are committed to taking the journey with our clients. Through conversations with our clients and partners, and given the current uncertainties associated with the COVID-19 crisis, we will continue to find ways to provide useful insights with thought leaders to help us all better navigate the coming weeks, months, and years ahead. This is part 3 of our panel discussion, Opportunities. Our special guest is Apollo Dupescu. He's responsible for communicating Dimensional Fund Advisors' academic foundations and investment beliefs. He presents an alternative to the traditional Wall Street approach. Apollo frequently speaks at various industries, conferences across the country, as well as advisor-client events. Prior to joining Dimensional, Apollo served in a variety of roles with the U.S. Department of State, from which he formed his own consulting firm, Apollo Consulting Group. His interest in finance and investments led him to teaching engagements at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Apollo received his PhD in economics and finance from UCSB and a BA from Michigan State University, where he competed in and coached water polo. So let's transition to the conversation on opportunity. Even though there's a lot of bad news out there, my conversations with clients have shown that really there's a lot of folks out there that still understand that these situations create opportunities as well. Having said that, when the stock market falls, many investors focus on today's value, which is understandable, but it's easy to lose sight of long-term goals in investing. So when the markets go down, how does this affect expected future returns of stocks and the opportunity to be rewarded? I think this is something worth exploring a little more.
Right. No, it goes back to that fundamental principle that it's all about the price. So whenever the prices come down, then you have to kind of look and say, just even intuitively, whenever the prices go down, that is an opportunity to perhaps get something at a is a lower price, a better valuation than when the prices were higher. Particularly when you think about the long-term investing that is involved in owning companies. And the way that I think about this is that Warren Buffett has always made that point that be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Buy when there's blood on the streets. And basically, what he's saying is that when something like this happens, don't get carried away with the emotional side of investing, which kind of says flee, safety, because that's what we are like as human beings. And when there was an animal chasing us, well, that emotion would make us run, and fleeing saved our lives. And that those emotions are also part of investors today. And I think that having an advisor to kind of say, is that in your best interest or not? And quite often what you find is that the emotional side of investing, the behavioral side, who's saying, well, when something goes down, that looks dangerous, I don't like it, I might need to sell it. Where the advisor is kind of saying, wait, investing should be about buying low and selling high. So what it means is that if something drops, that's an opportunity. And the question is, how do you capture it? And I think one of the more interesting things that advisors do, and it's quite often not, it's discussed, but I found it particularly relevant these days, is that when the market drops, and there's a certain balance between stocks and bonds, and there's a certain percentage in stocks and certain bonds, and then when the market drops, one of the things that advisors do is they have a plan that was put in place in advance. It's predetermined. What do we do when that happens? In other words, I live in Los Angeles, and I know at some point there will be an earthquake. And what I've tried to do is put a plan in place that I know what to do when that happens. I don't have to make decisions on the fly, particularly when emotions are high. And it's exactly the same with the advisors. When you have the predetermined plan, you know that when the stock market drops, and we didn't know when, but we knew at some point it will drop, what do we do? And it turns out that the best course of action is to pay attention and very carefully decide, is this a good time for me to buy more stocks, but not as a necessarily as a way to make a forecast that they're going to shoot the roof, but just simply I need to get my portfolio back into the right balance. And that in fact is called rebalancing. And rebalancing a portfolio is a fundamental premise of modern investing, which is when something goes down, you want to own back some of it so it gets the right proportion. But rebalancing has also helped investors on the way here, because for 11 years we had a sort of a bull market, and if you had not done rebalancing on the way up, in other words, trim the gains as stocks go up to maintain the balance, the portfolio would have been dominated by stocks, and they would have created too much of an exposure, too much risk in the allocation. So those are two sides of the same coin, and I think that it is hugely important to pay attention to this, and it has to be done carefully. And advisors pay attention all the time. Is this the right time to rebalance? And quite often, the best decision is not to rebalance, but there are times when you ought to do it, and particularly when the markets are moving up and down quite more than normal.
Interesting. So in fact, when the market goes down, the light at the end of the tunnel can actually shine brighter.
Yep.
And it's interesting you brought up rebalancing. We just posted an article on rebalancing in times of high volatility. And what we like to say is that there's both an art and a science behind that. All right,
Absolutely.
let's let's move on to the next question. So we know intuitively that no one can predict the future, but investors often still try and grasp onto the idea that a person or a system can do just that, predict the future. Which stock to buy, when to get into and out of the market. Some indeed have shown on occasion to be successful. Intertwined with this is the concept of distinguishing luck from skill. So can you help us sort out what the real issues are in trying to time the market or acting on news to try and reactively craft an investment decision?
Yeah. So there are two questions, if I have them. One has to do with selecting the right stocks, and the other one has to do with moving in out of the market, which is what market timing is. So let me
Sure,
start with the
fair
first
enough.
one. Should we how do you think about maybe kind of moving out of the just should are there particular sectors better positioned, particular stocks better positioned to take advantage of the current situation? And in that system, the idea is something like this. If this squares, again, the stock market, some folks define success as cherry picking what they think are the right sectors or the right companies in this environment. The thing with this, there are two things with this. The first one is that, surprise, surprise, you're not the only one. In fact, right now, just as a statistic, there are more professionally managed mutual funds in the US than actual stocks trading on the market. So it is extremely competitive out there. And what happens is that anytime you find a company or a sector that is better positioned, people crowd it in. It's like you go on eBay when there's something that really looks good and you have enough buyers, the price will be moved up to the point where it might not be such a good deal. And that's what's happening right now, is that whatever is obvious and whatever people are saying, aha, this is gonna be the next thing, well, the price gets moved up. And even the technology that we're using today, I mean, just look at the price and what happened to it. It might have been a good deal a while ago. Right now, what you're paying might or might not be such a good deal because the price has moved up so much and it's become expensive. That's the first thing. The second thing that I would caution people is that in order for you to take advantage of this system, in order for you to really make money out of this, what you need to do is concentrate. You have to concentrate, because concentration in investments is the way that you hit it big, and
And,
that's
and
how
when you
you.
say concentrate, you're not saying, okay, I got to think hard on this. It's you're talking about
That's a good
concentrate.
point.
position, but
Concentration
you can
is
do
that you
both
put
if you
a
want
lot of
to.
your money. You put a lot of your money into these bets. You put a lot of your money into one. That's thank you for bringing. It's not concentrate like focus, but it's you need to concentrate a lot of your assets, put a lot of your money into an investment. Because if you don't do this, then the alternative is that you have these investments, but if you have them alongside many others, not any one investment would ever significantly impact your wealth. And that's the system that I personally appreciated, because in this system where when you try to select and concentrate and place big bets, what you're doing is you have the opportunity to make it big if you hit the right bet. The problem is that, as I've seen it over and over again, it's also possible that putting so much money into a business or a sector can also lead to devastation. And to me, if you are an investor today, you could speculate and shoot for the fences and see if this works out, and you can make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. I think the value proposition that Dimensional, and I think I'm speaking for Morgan as well, is not let's shoot the lights out, let's start place bets with your money, but rather we want to have a system where not any one investment would ever significantly impact your wealth. So in this scheme, let's say in a global portfolio, the global equity portfolio, there would be over 12,000 plus companies that you own in 40 different stock markets. And in that respect, what you're really doing is going back to what Morgan said. It's about the reliability of outcome, shrinking the range of what can happen with your money. Instead of your money can go either here or here, it's narrower. And why? Because if you own 12,000 companies, is it likely that all of them would go under at exactly the same time? So you lose all your money in the stock market. And the answer is quite unlikely. And if that's the case, we probably have big problems, more like Mad Max time, a lot more concern than our investment portfolio. But on the other hand, you also have to realize that there won't be any one investment that's going to shoot the lights out.
But
Simply
it's
that the value proposition is not how do we change somebody's wealth status quickly. It's rather how do you grow the assets in a more responsible way. And you're going to get there, but instead of getting from point A to point B with all kinds of craziness, you're trying to mitigate and reduce the range of the outcomes with somebody's money.
it's funny as you were describing this, the left hand concentrated position example sounds to me a little like Las Vegas, like
It
going to
is.
Vegas, and you get big winners and big losers, and the big winners, they're out there very visible and talking and buying drinks for everybody, and the losers kind of sneak out the back door.
Exactly right. And when you hit a winner, you feel like, oh, it's my skill. When it's a loser, well, it's just bad luck. When in fact, it's not really under your control. I mean,
Yeah,
you control this, and I think that to that example, if you are embracing the market, if you are saying, I don't want to place bets, I want to be the casino house and put the odds in my favor. To me, the way to do it is not to try to pick some stocks, but really buy globally, buy the entire global productive capacity, and play enough hands. In other words, stay in the game enough, long enough, where the odds are tilted in your favor.
right. And I always tell investors, hey, if you want to go to Vegas, go to Vegas. Just realize what your potential outcomes are, and if those potential outcomes from you know losing almost, if not everything, to you know getting a big windfall, if both of those outcomes don't really suit your goals with regard to perhaps retirement money and money you can't afford to lose, then maybe think twice about investing in a concentrated position.
Or if you have like what I call like sandbox money. So it's basically
Hmm.
say, I do want to try it. I do like the investing. I do like the appeal of making moves and being in the market. And I have very close family members who do that. And it's absolutely fine because to them, it's stimulating the brain muscle. It's something intriguing and interesting and they want to just learn it. But the bulk of their family assets are invested responsibly with an advisor. And they have a part that they're just basically keeps them busy, particularly in these days where everybody's stuck at home. But realizing that's if you're not in there, it's not a competitive advantage. It just be careful, tread. I mean, and it just I've talked to so many people lately who got this lesson because they got into oil and they thought oil, oh geez, like all these contracts, you can make so much money, and the
Yeah.
oil is cheap. This is the best place to be, and best time to be an investor in oil. And then a few weeks ago, you saw the negative price, and so many people lost their shirts. There are a lot of retail investors who got into this. And in fact, I was reading that the inflows are huge in the largest oil ETF just before it just completely went bonkers.
Son of
So,
God. Well, I'm still waiting for that time where I go to the gas station and they pay me to fill up my gas tank.
oh,
So great. That's I really appreciate that feedback. Wrapping up this idea of opportunities out there. You're speaking with a lot of folks out there. Um, and what challenges do you generally see for investors trying to navigate all of this that's going on by themselves? And it just seems like there's a lot going on now with kids at home, family life, career, and then the markets and the economy with a lot of uncertainty. Um, how well do people fare trying to do this on their own?
I think there are two issues when I see people trying to do this on their own. The first one is that there is a behavioral consideration to this, and I mean, there are three things basically. If I think about it, there are three things when people try to do it at home. The first one is a behavioral consideration that people sometimes don't have the easiest time dealing with their own money, and quite often the decisions that they make are emotional. So they're not necessarily based on quite a lot of reason, but it's emotional because you hear from somebody, or you feel like this is the right time. So you see, I don't know, I don't think it's the right time in my, but it's really quite a lot of behavioral that we've seen with people in terms of deploying their assets, and it's also emotionally stressful when you deal with your own money because if you make a mistake, and I personally, my father-in-law at some point, apparently didn't do very well in some investments, and that he controlled, and he's been really upset for years and years and years, and I don't know that that's ever going to go away. I mean, that regret, like what I do with my own money, it's a tough nut to crack. The second part of it is that the competence that advisors have, and the experience and the professional credentials and the expertise that they built over the years, it's really not easy to match by somebody whose core competency is not investments. It's like me saying that I picked up a book on, electrical engineering, and I can popular mechanics or something, and I'll go and I'll say, well, I want to compete with a guy who's been doing this, or a gal who's been doing this for 20, 30 years. It's just very different. There's a level of expertise and knowledge that you gain by being part of that, and if you just taking the time and do it, and you absolutely dive into it, that might be something worth considering. I just find that it's really hard to replicate the experience, the competence that advisors have. And the third piece that I found with do-it-yourselfers is that quite often it is one person dealing with finances, and everybody else in the household is a little bit on the outside. And I find it's quite troubling because, knock on wood, something happens to that person. It's really hard for the family at that point to figure out where's the money, how do we deal with this, and then trying to find some help in those times of crisis. It's actually quite bad because you could be prey to a schmuck. So it's a lot better if you have an advisor who can not only look at one person's financial goals, but it's something that goes across the spouse, goes with the kids, so you can pass on not only monetary and wealth in terms of money, but also family values. And I think it's a really big part because we don't live in an individual society. We live in a family society, and quite often I have been surprised to see how often the do-it-yourselfers are just like one person, and the spouse is completely on the outside. And I used to be like that years ago, and I realized that's not right, because my spouse needs to be involved, needs to be part of these decisions, and know about the financial matters of the family.
Apollo, you have laid out a lot of pearls onto our virtual desk here, and we very much appreciate your time. And we wish you safety moving forward. And what I'm going to do is share my screen as we wrap this up. So again, Apollo, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. This is a lot of great information that we covered. For those of you listening, feel free to contact your WorthPointe personal financial advisor at any time if you have any questions or thoughts on any of the material that we discussed, or reach out to us at the number, email, or find us at the website below. Thank you and take care.